You don't want guests stressed before the celebration begins. You don't want them all panicked and stressed. You want it to be easy. What steps can you take to make it easier? Welcome back to the Wedding Buzz. It's your host, Sydney, and today I am going to bring it back to the basics. I know that this is engagement season. A lot of people are in the beginning stages of their wedding planning, and I want to talk about picking a wedding venue. And there are a few things that really make it easier on you and your guests that I want you to look for while touring different venues. So let's dive in. I'm excited. The venue sets the whole foundation for your whole wedding of where is it going to be? And also, once you pick the venue that you really want, depending on their availability, that's going to set the date. So, picking a venue is a huge part of wedding planning. It's usually the first step, and it's a really exciting step. And you get to really envision, like, okay, what are our pictures going to look like? What's the vibes of the venue? Is it beach? Is it mountain? Is it a barn? Is it a hotel? So it's a really exciting step of wedding planning. So let's dive in on some things to look out for and things that will just make the day easier on you and your guests because you want to have a good day, but you also want your guests to have a good day. And there are some things that can make the experience for your guests better or worse. So the first thing is, if possible, I like choosing one location. I understand sometimes you have to do like a ceremony in a church and then a reception somewhere else. And if that's the case, it's okay. But if you're not super religious or there's not a real reason why you need to have ceremony in a different location, I highly recommend putting your ceremony, cocktail, and reception all at one place. It just makes it easier for the flow of the day. And when you need to travel from one location to another, you have to add in more time. So if you do need to do a church or something for your ceremony and you're going elsewhere for cocktail and reception, that's okay. Just make sure that you build in extra time. People love to stand and chit chat after the ceremony, and you don't want your planner or the venue staff or anyone having to like super rush your guests. I really feel bad when I'm like, hi guys, like I need you to move. Of course I do it as nice as possible. But I always feel bad when I'm like, okay, time to go, stop chatting, let's go. Because your family's running into each other. They haven't seen each other in a long time. Maybe some old friends are catching up. And I don't want to be that person that's ending the conversation. So just make sure that if you're able to do one spot, beautiful. If you have to do two, that's okay. Just build in extra time. And then also make sure that transitioning from the first location to the second location is easy for your guests. Do you have golf carts on property that someone can be going back and forth? Do you have a bus? Are you providing transportation for your guests, or do they need to figure out their own ride? If it's a local wedding and it's like in your hometown and everyone's kind of from there, it's not that big of a deal because most people will have their vehicles. If it's a destination wedding and people are flying in, they most likely don't have vehicles. So then your guests are going to end up having to possibly Uber to the first location, Uber to the second location, and then Uber home at the end of the night or back to their hotel or something. So if that's the case, I would maybe consider providing some sort of transportation from the first location to the second to make it easier on guests. I have a friend, this isn't a wedding I'm working or anything, but I do have a friend that's going out of town, very far away for a wedding and next week. And they just texted them and was like, hey, can you rent a car and drive guests from the first location to the second? Which is a very odd request. You don't want to do that to your guests. You don't want them to have to be transportation. And especially don't ask them the week before the wedding. But just some things to think about is if you can do it at one location, that is easy. And when you're touring venues, sometimes there's places like a country club where they have like different properties or different spaces on the same location. And even then, make sure that you have golf carts or a bus or something to bring people from the first location to the second and that it'll be easy. I worked a wedding a couple months ago in Arizona and it was a beautiful place and the ceremony was at the same property but a different side of the property. And they had a bus going back and forth because there was not really parking at the ceremony spot. So make sure that it's just a smooth transition and communicate what the guest should expect. Where can they park? When will the bus be there? What type of bus will be there? What will it look like? Or is it a golf cart? What do they need to expect so that your guests just it's easy. Because when you're I'm sure you've been a wedding guest before and when you're like, where do I go? What time? What am I looking for? Where am I that's not an enjoyable experience, and you want your guests to enjoy your wedding. So, the second part, kind of what I was just saying is if you have to move locations, nail the transportation. Make sure golf carts, shuttles, buses, make sure that you have them, make sure you have enough of them, make sure that they are doing trips back and forth and that it's a very smooth transition. I also, if you are doing buses or something like this, I would recommend having 2 or 3 buses because if it's everything takes longer on wedding day than you think. So it might be a 5-minute drive, but by the time the bus pulls up, the guests get on it, then it drives the 5 minutes, then it stops, the guests get off of it. All of that is like a 20-minute round trip or more. And so if cocktail hour is only 1 hour and this bus has to do 3 trips, your guests are missing the entire cocktail hour. So I would think about that and maybe have 3 buses. It's going to be more money, but think about it before you book your venue. The next thing I want you to look at is the on-site getting ready spaces. If the venue has bridal suites, groomsmen suites, that's amazing. Is it big enough to hold your entire wedding party? Ask what time you can arrive because a lot of these venues like to say, look at our beautiful bridal suite. If you want to use it, it's $700 an hour. And most of the time, the bridesmaids and the bride need to get there at like 8 a.m. So $700 times all day, it's a lot of extra money. It might be worth it to you. In many cases, I do think that it's worth that extra money just to be on property, one location. You don't have to travel throughout the day. But I also understand that that's a lot of money and you might not want to pay that. So, as you're touring venues, make sure that you ask if they have bridal suites, groomsmen suites, and what time can you get in? And then another key question, what time do they kick you out? Can you leave your stuff in that room during ceremony and during the reception? Or do you have to take all of it out? I have seen venues that say you can get ready here, but you have to take all your stuff. And my issue with that is when you're a bride or bridesmaids and you're ready for a wedding, where are you going to take your bag full of your slippers and pajamas from the morning and your makeup bag and your curling iron? Are you bringing that down the aisle with you? I don't think so. So you need to make sure to ask, can I leave my stuff here? And if not, where do I leave it? Do you have storage? And can I access this storage? Because I've seen all these scenarios as well. I've seen one where they don't have storage and then people are, trying to shove things back in your car. They're dressed, hair and makeup done, ready for the wedding, and they're going back and forth. Usually not the bride, but still your bridesmaids. You want the day to be fun and easy for them as well. So ask this question. I've also seen where there's storage, like, okay, we'll put your stuff in the storage, but then it's a locked closet. And I've seen bridesmaids who are moms who are breastfeeding, who need their breast pumps or this or that. And now they can't access their stuff. Usually it's like you can ask someone at the venue or ask your planner, or like we can get into it. But sometimes it's a process. And again, things take longer than you think on wedding day. You have to go locate the venue person, and they have to go locate a key or locate the person who has access to it. And it just takes longer. So I want you to be aware of these things in advance. They're not necessarily bad things, but I want you to be aware of it in advance before you book the venue. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I also want you to think about who's going to be responsible for gathering your things at the end of the night and make sure that they know where to go. What is beautiful, what I've seen before, is that people have, a specific family or friend member or someone kind of outside. Like I saw someone who, like, they had like a family nanny and they asked this nanny to come and collect all of their things. So at the end of the night, like I packed up their stuff and then met with this other person and they took it home. And it wasn't like the bride's parents having to lug all this stuff or a drunk groomsman having to lug all this stuff. It was like another person family friend, someone who took their stuff and went back to their house and did whatever they needed to do with it. So it's just important things to talk about in advance. It's not a problem. Every wedding, you have to figure these things out. It's not a problem. And if your venue doesn't let you keep your stuff in the bridal suite all day, it's not a horrible thing, but just figure out what the answer is before you book the venue. So let's talk about guest comfort, terrain, and accessibility. Many guests will wear heels. If the ground is uneven bricks, gravel, or grass, that could be tricky. If it's a beach wedding and you want it on the sand, obviously that's like a choice that you're aware of, but I would communicate that with the guests that they will be in the sand. But check the ground. Sometimes there's like uneven bricks or gravel that can be hard to walk in. And another thing that I've seen brides kind of complain about is if their dress is dragging or their veil is dragging, that then it gets caught on the uneven ground. Obviously, I try my best to hold my dress and veil for my brides, hold their stuff. But when they're walking down the aisle, unless they want me walking with them, I can't help them, you know? So I would take a look at that at your ceremony spot. What does the aisle look like? And is it even? Can you walk nicely? Or is your dress going to snag on it? And again, it's not horrible if that's the case, but you might want to think about putting down some sort of aisle runner or a different walkway to make sure that you're not getting stuck. If you're not, you don't want to be tripping. You don't want any of these things happening. So take a look at that as you're touring the property of the surfaces. Think about elderly guests, wheelchairs, strollers. You want to make sure that if grandma's in a wheelchair and you want her in the front row, can she get there? And you also don't want elderly guests falling. So just take a look at the terrain and if there's other like small solutions or alternate pathways that would help out. Another thing to make it easier for guests, which I kind of touched on before, but parking and arrival experience. Is there enough parking? Is it easy to find? Are there signs or attendants provided? You don't want guests stressed before the celebration begins. You don't want them all panicked and stressed. You want it to be easy. So, is it hard to find? And if it is hard to find, it's not like you can't choose this venue, but what steps can you take to make it easier? Do they let you put signs out front? Do they have anyone that can stand out front and help guide guests? Bathrooms. You'd be surprised how many venues don't have bathrooms or that the bathrooms are not exactly what you would want for your weddings. Make sure that you ask, are there bathrooms? How many? Where are they? Are they clean? Are they accessible? Make sure that there's enough. I've been to a wedding before where it's like over 100 people and there's literally one stall. And the bathroom line was like 15, 20 people deep for the men and the women, one stall. You don't want that. You don't want that for your wedding. The next thing is shade and weather protection. Even if the venue is gorgeous, if everyone is sweating in the sun or freezing in the cold, it affects the experience. It really does. I've had guests that are like, we're out by the ocean. It's stunning, but they are literally getting up during the ceremony to go find a corner of shade because it's just too hot. It's too hot. People are baking in the sun and they don't care at that point if it's pretty. They don't care how beautiful the bride is. They're miserable. I've had people, passing out at weddings before because it's too hot, which remember, I'm in South Florida. So these things happen and, people decide to pick ceremonies in the summer that are right in the sun. And I strongly disagree with that, with those choices. And same with freezing cold. If you're in a place that's cold, if your guests are just sitting there absolutely freezing, they don't care if it's pretty. They don't care what flowers you did. They don't care what your dress looks like. None of it. They're freezing cold and they're miserable and it's going to affect their experience. So make sure that you have shade for guests, that you have, if it's really cold, that you have heaters, maybe you have blankets. Make sure that you have those things to make the guest experience better because it does matter. And those are things that they will remember about the day. Also, make sure that there's backup spaces. So, if you're doing an outdoor wedding, like an outdoor ceremony, make sure that there's an indoor spaces backup in case it's way too hot or raining or way too cold or something like that. And the other thing that I want you to think about is acoustics and sound restrictions. Some stunning venues have noise restrictions where, the sound can't be too loud. So the whole time the venue is arguing that the DJ has to turn the music down or that the music has to stop at like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. And that's not always a bad thing, but make sure you're aware of it before you pick your venue. You don't want, last minute to be like, oh, party ends at 8 p.m. And you're like, what? You don't want that. So make sure that you know what the restrictions are. If it's in a neighborhood and the music has to be really quiet, it's usually not a bad thing, but make sure that your DJ or band is aware of it in advance. I have had a band before that just would not turn the subwoofer off and was arguing with me. And the venue was like, if they don't do it, we're shutting the party down, and calling the police. And, that put me in a really tough position because I was trying to tell them over and over again. They would not listen to me. Finally, I talked to the groom and was like, you need to talk to your band because the venue's about to shut the party down. You don't want these things happening. So make sure to talk to the venue about acoustics and sound restrictions. The opposite is make sure that it's not a super loud area. Public parks sometimes have screaming kids in the background that you can't control, your DJ can't control, and I can't control. I mean, I can try my best to be like, hey, shh, there's a wedding, like, shh. But if people are screaming in the background, kids, or just not screaming in a bad way, but if you're at a public park and there's kids having fun or whatever, they might be making a lot of noise during your ceremony. If you're at the beach or anywhere outside, wind can be really loud, especially with microphones. Wind noise in a microphone is not the best sound. So kind of think about wind when you're touring your venue. Try to see if it's a spot that you feel like is going to be very windy. Is it like a, open spot, top of a mountain where it's very, very windy? Again, it's not necessarily a bad or horrible thing, but think about the wind for the acoustics and then also for your decorations. I just a few weeks ago was dealing with drapes and such on an arch on the beach, and it was windy. It was very, very windy, and there's only so much we could really do to counteract the wind and get the decoration to stay exactly the way that we want it. We tied it down, taped it down, but it is hard to get it to. It was like a drape that had like a swoosh in it, and you're trying to get it to stay a certain way, and it just wouldn't because it was windy, and that's out of our control. So make sure to think about this stuff. Again, it doesn't have to be bad, but if it's a very windy location, talk to your DJ or band about microphones and the best way to counteract the wind, and talk to your florist or decor company about wind and make sure that things aren't going to be falling over, that things are weighted properly, and maybe don't do things like drapes in a windy spot. The next thing, which we kind of touched about, is just the flow between spaces. Make sure that ceremony to cocktail hour to reception all flows well. Even if you don't need transportation between the two spots, make sure that it just flows well. Where do the guests have to walk? What's the pathway? Do they have to go upstairs? Do they have to go downstairs? Do they have to use an elevator? Is there only one elevator for 100 guests where it's going to take an hour to get all of your guests up and down? I've seen that many times and it's very inconvenient. So, talk about these things when you're touring your venue and just make sure that you're aware of what the guest experience will be. Walk from ceremony to cocktail to reception, and then picture that you're doing this walk with 100 people. Is it easy for these 100 people to get from point A to point B? Or do you think that that would be a mess with 100 people trying to do this flow in a short amount of time? And if it's a mess, maybe tour a few more venues. So to recap, venues are so fun to tour, but it doesn't just have to look pretty. Make sure that it's functional and that it will make the day feel effortless. I would look into the logistics, talk to the venue, ask them questions about the logistics while you keep the aesthetics in mind, because obviously that matters. You want it to be pretty, but the logistics matter as well, and it will affect your day and your guest experience on your big day. Well, with that, congratulations on your engagement. I am so excited for you during this exciting time and as you start your venue tours. That's, it's just bringing your big day to life, and you get to start envisioning what your wedding day is actually going to start looking like. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope that you guys can write down some of these questions and bring them to your venues and talk to your family about it so that they're looking at these things as well as you're walking different spaces. And I hope that you guys find the perfect venue. I know that you will. And I'll see you in the next episode.